After my face was disfigured, my best friend set me up with a boyfriend. The man didn't care about my appearance and treated me extremely well. The only drawback was that he was a bit poor. My parents strongly opposed our relationship, but I still ran away with him. Then the man opened a brothel at home to pay off debts, and I became the only prostitute there. My tongue was cut off and I was chained up at home, available to anyone who paid. After being reborn, I repaid everything I had suffered to my former best friend. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. In the cramped and damp mud house, I was chained to a dilapidated bed like a dog, with a rusty chain binding me. Naked, I huddled in the corner with only a tattered, blackened blanket covering me. At that moment, a woman walked in. She was dressed elegantly, a stark contrast to the squalid surroundings. Upon seeing me, her face contorted with surprise and disbelief. Good heavens! Daisy, how could you be so stubborn and refuse to listen to your family's advice? Why did you have to elope to these mountains? Now. The woman's tone was a mixture of pity and reproach as she pretended to wipe the corner of her eye. Yet, she remained rooted to the spot, a flicker of disgust crossing her face as she looked at me. As if viewing something filthy. After 6 months, when I saw this woman again, my eyes widened. My body trembled uncontrollably, and a tidal wave of anger surged through me. I let out a few painful whimpers at the woman, venting the overwhelming hatred in my heart. As I suddenly moved, the sound of dragging chains echoed, standing out starkly in the dirty, dilapidated room. The woman, startled, took a step back and frowned. Daisy, look at the state you're in now. Where's that little princess everyone used to cherish? You look more like a wild dog, and a mute one at that. With that, the woman covered her mouth and burst into laughter. The more she laughed, the more frenzied I became. Using all my strength, disregarding the blood dripping from my wrists, I crawled towards her like a rabid beast. Only one thought consumed my mind, which is to tear her apart. Just then, a man's cursing voice entered the room. I shuddered and quickly crawled towards the corner. Then the lash of a whip fell on my back. What the bloody hell are you wailing about? Need a good thrashing, do you? If you've got so much energy, I'll find a few blokes for you. I crouched on the ground with my weakened body. The pain from the whipping nearly made me faint, until I heard Chloe's voice behind me again. My God, Daisy, are you living off clients now? Your parents would be heartbroken if they knew. But you don't need to worry at all, they won't find out. Because your mother passed away recently, and your father is now bedridden from a stroke. And your brother was just sentenced to prison for rape. Oh, and your sister-in-law miscarried because of it. See how good I am to you, coming all this way to tell you about this. But you don't need to thank me, after all, we're best friends, aren't we? The woman's words shattered the last remnant of hope in my heart, plunging me into an icy abyss of despair. My fingernails dug into my flesh as I lay on the ground, staring at her in disbelief with bloodshot eyes. She seemed amused by my reaction and continued with a smirk. Daisy, darling, can you guess who your brother raped? That's right, it was me. I told your brother I had news of your whereabouts. Without hesitation, he asked me to take him to you. And on the way, he suddenly turned into a beast and raped me. Tisk, TSK. Your brother always claimed he didn't fancy me. Yet he raped me even though he's married. What a hypocrite. Just like you, Daisy. You called me your best friend. But if we were truly close, why didn't you help me win your brother's heart? Why didn't you want me as your sister-in-law? You and your brother are cut from the same cloth, both two-faced liars. You've brought this fate upon yourselves. Enjoy your new life, dear Daisy. I'll be living comfortably with the compensation your brother paid me. Don't worry, we're best friends after all. I'll come visit you when I can. Liam, you'd better treat my friend well, you hear? Or you'll have me to answer to. Liam let out a cold laugh and spat at me. Don't worry, I'll take good care of her. I don't even mind that she's disfigured now. That's how much I love her. Their demonic laughter echoed as tears soaked my face. Regret and anguish intertwined, overwhelming me. All I could think of was my parents, my brother, and my innocent young nephew who had never seen the world. When I woke up, I found myself back in the year I graduated from university. It took me 2 days to convince myself that I had truly been reborn. The first thing I did was call my parents and my brother. Hearing their voices after so long filled me with an indescribable ache. I cursed my own stupidity for not listening to my parents' advice, which not only harmed myself but also dragged my entire family down with me. In this life, I would make Chloe Ainsworth pay for her sins in blood. Chloe and I were university classmates and roommates. Being from the same hometown in an unfamiliar city naturally brought us closer. Her parents divorced early on, and both remarried. She lived with her mother and stepfather. At first, her stepfather and mother treated her well, but when she was in year 11, they had a son together. After that, Chloe fell out of favor. She was often scolded and beaten by her stepfather, living in constant fear. In contrast, I grew up in a relatively wealthy family, showered with endless love from my brother and parents. Chloe envied my family life immensely. She often said how she wished she could live in a family like mine. It was from that time on that her jealousy towards me began to take root. Chloe Ainsworth seemed to enjoy playing the victim in front of her roommates and other classmates. After hearing Chloe's constant complaints, dissatisfaction, and grievances about her biological family, the other girls' initial sympathy gradually turned into annoyance. Eventually, due to her lack of boundaries, constantly borrowing other people's makeup, shampoo, and clothes, they began to distance themselves from her. It was at this point that I, as her fellow northerner, had a burst of misplaced compassion and stood up to defend her. I generously allowed her to use my things without hesitation. Sometimes, I would even give her unopened lipsticks and perfumes that my brother had given me but I hadn't used. I even scolded the other girls for their lack of empathy, accusing them of bullying her and being snobbish in their treatment of her. Little did I know that she looked at me as if I were a complete fool. Chloe and I grew closer, our relationship becoming increasingly intimate. Anyone who didn't know better might have thought we were sisters. When she was afraid to go home during the holidays and needed to work part-time jobs to earn her tuition fees, I warmly invited her to stay at my house. Little did I know that my sympathy wouldn't be met with gratitude. Instead, it made her acutely aware of the differences between our worlds, sparking jealousy and resentment, which eventually turned into hatred towards me. More importantly, by inviting her into my home, I had unwittingly let a wolf into the fold. She set her sights on my brother, Leo Thorley. My brother Leo is tall, handsome, and accomplished. After graduating, he inherited our father's construction materials company and is always busy, only able to come home occasionally. Every time Leo visits, Chloe keeps staring at him and then casually tries to get information about him from me. I could see what she was thinking and not wanting to hurt her feelings. I told her directly that my brother had a girlfriend and was getting married soon. She was very disappointed upon hearing this. Laughing, she said she really wanted to be my sister-in-law and become part of our family, asking me to get my brother to break up with that girl. I smiled at the time, treating her words as a joke. Little did I know she actually meant it and even started to hate me for not helping her. No, rather than hate, it was more like she envied me. She didn't have what I had, so she couldn't stand to see me have it. My parents, being kind-hearted, saw how difficult it was for her to earn money for tuition through part-time jobs. They offered to sponsor her university fees. As if accustomed to my generosity, she gladly accepted, saying she would repay my parents in the future. In reality, she was pushing my whole family into an abyss. One night, my brother came home late from work. He seemed to have just showered, his hair still dripping wet, as he burst into my room and said, "Daisy, it's not good for your friend to stay here. I'll give you money to rent a flat for her to live in." As soon as he finished speaking, Chloe walked into the room with an awkward expression, her eyes red and teary. She said in a pitiful tone, "Am I causing trouble for you? I'm sorry, it's my fault. I've been a bother these past few days. Thank you for your hospitality. I'll leave tomorrow." My brother's face was gloomy, his brows furrowed. He didn't look back at Chloe. At that moment, I thought my brother was being absurd. How could he suddenly want to kick her out? Chloe was my best friend, and I had invited her to stay with us. How could he be so disrespectful to me? Angered, I shouted at him. What right do you have to make her leave? This isn't just your house. Mom and Dad haven't asked her to go yet. How is she bothering you? Having grown up spoiled by my parents, I was used to being the boss in our home. My brother's face turned red with anger, but he was helpless. He could only sigh and turn to leave. I comforted Chloe and badmouthed my brother. I told her that our home was her home, and she should feel at ease staying here. Later, when Chloe wasn't at home, my brother told me that she lacked self-respect and was deliberately trying to seduce him. He warned me not to get too close to her. Looking back now, I realize my brother had seen through her scheming ways even then, while I naively considered her my best friend. I was furious at the time and berated my brother again, accusing him of being arrogant and assuming everyone fancied him. My brother had always doted on me since childhood, indulging me in everything. In the end, seeing how upset I was, he let the matter drop. Afterwards, during every holiday break, I would bring her back home. My brother even moved out to avoid any suspicion due to my thoughtlessly bringing Chloe home. But she still kept asking me about my brother from time to time. Daisy, when are your brother and sister-in-law getting married? Where is your brother's company? Your brother is so outstanding. I'm so envious that you have such a wonderful brother. I laughed and said, my brother is your brother too. She shook her head. No, I want to be your sister-in-law. Daisy, this face cream you've got is amazing. It must be really expensive. Chloe said admiringly, fingering the $4,000 skincare product that my brother had given me. The other two roommates in our dorm looked over and laughed. It is expensive. That little bottle costs over $4,000. Chloe, you're being a bit wasteful using Daisy's skincare product on your hands like that. Chloe paused for a moment, seemingly surprised at how pricey the face cream was. A flash of envy crossed her eyes as she smiled and said, so what if it's expensive? I'm not using yours. Daisy's generous, and we're close. If I asked, she'd probably give it to me. Isn't that right, Daisy? The roommates pursed their lips but said nothing. Chloe's eyes flickered, and in the next second, she was about to dip 4 fingers into my face cream to scoop out a dollop. I quickly snatched the skincare product from her hands and said coldly, this is quite expensive. I rarely use it myself. I think this would be more suitable for you. I tossed her a cheap hand cream that came free with a purchase. The two roommates exchanged glances, apparently quite surprised. Chloe was stunned too, seemingly not expecting me to react this way. Indeed, in the past, I would have generously said, go ahead and use it. What's mine is yours. Now, I wanted nothing more than to tear her to pieces. I felt disgusted even sharing a room with her, let alone letting her touch my things. I tried to calm myself, silently reminding myself that killing her would not only implicate me but also let her off too easily. I wanted to pay her back for everything I had been through. Just then, my phone suddenly rang. Chloe eagerly leaned over and asked, Daisy, who is it? Is it Ethan? I'm telling you, that bloke is no good. He's been involved with several girls, gets into fights everywhere, and acts all high and mighty because his family's loaded. Don't let him fool you, Chloe warned, looking like she was afraid her best friend would be deceived. Little did she know, she was the one who had deceived me the most. The Ethan she mentioned was a rich kid who was pursuing me. And his character was indeed as bad as she described. He had an extremely volatile temper and would even hit girls if provoked. But Chloe wasn't warning me out of kindness. She had confessed to him before and been rejected. Then she saw him turn around and pursue me, which made her uncomfortable. Then, just today, after receiving Ethan's message, I told Chloe about it. Chloe volunteered to go and reject him on my behalf. She said Ethan had a volatile temper, and what if he got angry and hurt me? I was very touched at the time, but also afraid of Ethan's fierce reputation. So I asked her to pass on a gentle message for me. Just say that he's great, but I have a boyfriend, and I hope he finds someone even better. She agreed, but then went behind my back and twisted my words when she spoke to Ethan. She told Ethan that I looked down on him, thought he was ugly, fat, and disgusting. That he had body odor and was only pursuing me because his family had some money. She said I thought he should take a look at himself. Ethan, frustrated in his pursuit of me and hearing these offensive words, allegedly from me through Chloe, was instantly enraged. Then the next day, in a fit of anger, he came to school with sulfuric acid. I knew nothing about this at the time and was planning to go out for a meal with Chloe. Then at the school gates, Ethan threw sulfuric acid at me, disfiguring me on the spot. He cursed at me like a madman. "You dare look down on me just because you've got some looks? Fine. I'll ruin that face of yours today. I'll turn you into an ugly freak." As the acid splashed towards my face, I blocked some with my arm. But the rest hit the left side of my face, ultimately disfiguring me. The situation escalated, and Ethan fled. I was rushed to the hospital. My parents and brother hurried from our home, and upon seeing my condition, they were so heartbroken that they fainted. My brother called the police, and eventually Ethan was caught and sentenced. However, due to his family's wealth and influence, they paid compensation and pulled some strings, resulting in him only serving a year. As for me, a young woman about to graduate and enter society, my left face was completely disfigured. I lost my usual cheerful and lively demeanor. Everyone thought it was simply a case of a boy taking revenge with acid after being rejected. However, almost no one knew that Chloe was the true culprit. My brother sent me to the best hospital for treatment. During my recovery, Chloe visited me multiple times to offer support. After I returned home, Chloe was constantly by my side, taking care of me. She told my parents that she felt responsible for not stopping Ethan, I said. Seeing me like this pains her deeply. Each time she said this, she would embrace me and sob uncontrollably. My parents were deeply moved, and even I, in my despair after being disfigured, found my mood improving thanks to her attentive care and support. I felt grateful to have such a good friend. Later, Jasmine from my dormitory came to visit me at home. She deliberately sent Chloe away to talk to me privately. She told me that she had previously witnessed Chloe confessing her feelings to Ethan. She also relayed to me the provocative words Chloe had used to deliberately anger Ethan. Jasmine warned me that Chloe wasn't as harmless as she appeared on the surface. I was furious after hearing this. Chloe had been by my side every day, tirelessly taking care of me and offering guidance. How could Jasmine say such things about her? Moreover, Chloe was always warning me about Ethan's poor character, fearing that he might lead me astray. How could she possibly confess to Ethan? I felt that Jasmine was intentionally slandering her. After all, Jasmine disliked Chloe the most in our dormitory and had never shown her a kind face. At that time, I was as if under a spell, believing that Chloe, who had been so good to me, could never deceive me. Seeing that I didn't believe her, Jasmine reluctantly comforted me before leaving. And because I didn't heed Jasmine's words, I stepped from one hell into another. Later, I came to understand that in Chloe Ainsworth's eyes, even though Ethan Blackwood had poor character, a bad temper, and was promiscuous, the most important thing was that he was a trust fund kid. For Chloe, this was the most crucial factor. She claimed not to care about material conditions. But in reality, she was desperately looking for a wealthy boyfriend. As long as he had money, that was all that mattered. It's just that Ethan didn't fancy her. In my previous life, Chloe used 2 men to send me to hell. Now that I've been given a second chance, I hold the power. I'll let her have a taste of her own medicine. I ignored Chloe's incessant chatter and picked up my phone, ready to go downstairs. Chloe clung to me like a leech and asked, "Daisy, where are you going?" "I'll come with you." Suppressing my irritation, I turned to her with a faint smile and said calmly, "I need to go out for a bit." "Where are you going?" "Are you meeting Ethan?" Chloe asked eagerly, as if afraid I might agree to see Ethan. I laughed coldly to myself. "No," I replied. Chloe smiled awkwardly, seeming relieved. "Oh, all right then. Off you go. We'll have dinner together when you get back." As I walked out of the school gates, I saw a short, obese man standing next to a luxury car, smoking. He was not tall, with small eyes, and his clothes were covered in designer logos. When he saw me, the man dropped his cigarette and walked over with a smile. "Daisy," he called out. "Have you agreed to be my girlfriend yet? Please give me a chance." I frowned at Ethan and sighed, hesitating before speaking. "I'm sorry, but it's not possible between us. You're great and talented, but my best friend told me you're not a good person," I said. "She said you're not attractive enough for me, and you're involved with other girls. Especially, she mentioned that you even pursued her before. So, it's just not possible for us." Ethan was stunned for a moment, then a flash of anger crossed his face. "Your friend is talking rubbish," he snapped. "Who does she think she is to say such things about me? I don't even know her. When did I ever pursue her?" I took a step back, feeling disgusted. Seeing my fear, Ethan tried to suppress his rage and said more calmly, "Daisy, who is this friend of yours? Let her come here, I want to ask her face to face." I turned to look at the girl walking towards us and said, "Here she comes." Chloe saw me talking to Ethan and looked displeased. She walked up to us and said to me, "Daisy, didn't you say you weren't going to meet Ethan? Why?" I pretended to look helpless and replied, "I know you told me not to see him. I just came out to reject him." Chloe's expression softened. She turned to Ethan and said, "Can't you stop pestering Daisy? She's already said she doesn't like you." Looking at Chloe, who had ruined his plans, Ethan exploded with rage. He pointed at her and shouted, "So it's you? You bloody slag. You've been slandering me. Do you think I'm too soft on you?" Without warning, Ethan kicked Chloe hard, sending her tumbling to the ground. She clutched her stomach, groaning in pain. People around us were startled and turned to look. I feigned confusion and asked, "You know my best friend?" Ethan sneered, "Of course I know her. She confessed to me. I rejected her, and now she's slandering me behind my back. What a piece of work! I'll teach you a lesson," he yelled. With that, Ethan's obese body delivered several more kicks to Chloe. She screamed in pain. I pretended to be surprised and turned to Chloe, twisting the knife further. Didn't you say he had a bad personality and a violent temper? That he looked like a pig and wasn't good enough for me? Then why did you?" My words made Ethan even more furious. He was about to punch Chloe when the security guards came running over. Ethan left in a rage, spitting on the ground. "You bad women. Wait for me," he shouted as he walked away. As I watched Ethan's retreating figure, I felt a sense of satisfaction. Ethan was a person of poor character who always sought revenge. There would be an interesting show to watch soon. I pretended to be angry with Chloe for confessing her feelings to Ethan behind my back, and I stopped talking to her. Chloe tried to explain to me that she had confessed without knowing about Ethan's behavior. She said she later found out and tried to stop me from falling for his tricks. I laughed to myself. Since the start of school, Ethan had been driving fancy cars, getting into fights, and chasing girls. His reputation for being a troublemaker was well known throughout the school. How could she claim she didn't know? Who was she trying to fool? Her repeated explanations were futile. Seeing that I didn't believe her, she had no choice but to cry in secret. Jasmine saw this and sneered, "What an act." I took back all the bags and clothes I had lent her. The girls in our dorm already disliked her, and now without me, she had no friends and became even more of a loner. She also ended up offending the hot-tempered Ethan, whom everyone avoided for fear of provoking him. This left her constantly on edge, and she became noticeably haggard. 2 days later, Jasmine and I went out for dinner. Just as we reached the school gate, I saw a familiar scene from my past life unfold before my eyes. Ethan Blackwood stepped out of a luxury car, holding a bottle in his hand, and looking furious as he rushed towards Chloe Ainsworth nearby. "You filthy wretch! Think you're too good for me? I'll show you," he shouted. As the acid splashed down, Chloe's agonized screams filled the air. Other students frantically backed away in terror. Jasmine covered my eyes in panic. Don't look. It's too horrifying. I felt both amused and satisfied inside. Taking Jasmine's hand, I said, "It's all right, I'm not scared." Jasmine exclaimed in surprise. "You delicate little princess, you're actually not afraid? You're braver than I thought." I found it funny. Ever since Jasmine first met me, she's called me Little Princess, saying I look just like Snow White from the fairy tale, pure-hearted and harmless. The type everyone wants to protect. That's why she's warned me multiple times that Chloe had bad intentions, telling me not to get too close to her. I didn't believe it, and ended up risking everything. Looking back now, it seems everyone around me could tell Chloe's true nature except for me. I was so foolish, as if under some kind of spell. Just like me in my past life, Chloe was sent to the hospital for treatment, while Ethan Blackwood was sentenced to 1 year in prison and had to pay some compensation. I didn't go to see Chloe when she was in trouble, nor did I care to, because I knew how much pain she was in right now. After all, these were all things I had experienced before. I had said I would pay her back for everything. A month later, I graduated, and my brother came to pick me up. At the school gate, seeing my brother's confident face, I rushed over and hugged him tightly. Leo ruffled my hair. "You're too old for this cuddling." I was too choked up to speak. In my previous life at this moment, I was still lying in the hospital, in excruciating pain. And Leo, in order to ensure Ethan received proper punishment and to get me the best facial treatment, was running around everywhere, losing a lot of weight in the process. All of this stemmed from my poor judgment and being deceived. Thinking about Leo's fate in my previous life sent a chill through my heart. Leo instinctively looked back, as if searching for someone. I pulled him into the car and then told him about the situation with Ethan and Chloe. After listening, Leo frowned and said, "That girl's intentions aren't pure. You shouldn't hang out with her anymore. Stay away from her." I nodded. "I know. I won't bother with her again." Leo raised an eyebrow. "Had a falling out?" I nodded without elaborating further. Given a second chance at life, it would be foolish not to cut ties. Upon returning home, I hugged my parents tightly, feeling indescribably happy to see them well. Not long after, Chloe seemed to be doing much better. She frequently messaged me, asking why I hadn't come to see her. She even claimed that she had become like this because of me. I ignored her messages. I studied advertising design and found an internship at a company in my city after graduation. Every day after work, I would have dinner with my parents, my brother, and his girlfriend, chatting as a family. This was something I could only dream of in my previous life when I was trapped in that dirt-floored house. Now, I cherish everything dearly and won't let anyone take it away from me. I often post photos on social media of my daily life with my family. The handbag my brother gave me, and the bracelet from my future sister-in-law. Chloe is always the first to like my posts. I imagine she must be grinding her teeth in frustration, unable to stand seeing me happy. 2 months later, I received a call from Chloe Ainsworth. She asked to meet me, saying she had something to tell me. I knew what she was up to, so I hired 2 burly bodyguards to accompany me that day. This time, however, I didn't dress up nicely as Chloe had suggested. Instead, I deliberately applied smoky eye makeup, wore old-fashioned clothes, and put my hair up in a bun, making myself look quite unattractive. Chloe, on the other hand, was heavily disguised with a hat and a face mask. Above the mask, a piece of gauze was visible, along with a pair of eyes glaring at me with hatred. Especially when she noticed the 2 bodyguards standing behind me. "Daisy, why did you bring 2 bodyguards? What's the meaning of this? Are you afraid I might harm you?" she asked. "We're supposed to be best friends. I didn't get angry that you didn't visit me when I was injured, but you..." I interrupted her. "The way you're talking makes it sound like I was the one who threw acid on you. How is your disfigurement related to me?" Chloe frowned. "Daisy, how can you say that? I ended up like this because of you. Do you know how much pain I've been in? If I hadn't warned you, you would have been the one disfigured by acid for angering Ethan." I let out a cold laugh. "There's something wrong with what you're saying. Ethan got angry because you were talking badly about him behind his back. Did I tell you to insult him? You're the one who said nasty things, so how can you blame anyone else? So you're the one who provoked Ethan, it has nothing to do with me. Chloe stared at me with wide eyes, breathing rapidly, too angry to speak. A moment later, her tone turned extremely aggrieved. Daisy, I don't know why you would think of me like this, but I had good intentions today. I wanted to introduce you to a potential boyfriend. I've always been worried about you. You're too kind-hearted. What if you meet someone like Ethan Blackwood? I know this lad who's honest and down-to-earth. He's much better than those unreliable rich kids with power and influence. It wasn't me who had their face ruined in this life, it was her. Yet even with her disfigurement, she still had the mood to come here and try to set me up with someone to harm me. She truly hated me to the core, couldn't stand to see me doing well at all. I laughed coldly inside. Is that so? Is he really as good as you say? Well then, ask him to come out. Chloe smiled and picked up her phone. I'll ask him where he is now. In my previous life, after my face was disfigured, I became so self-conscious that I refused to go out and see people. Except for Chloe, I even disliked my parents and brother. Lashing out at them whenever I saw them, leaving them hurt and at a loss. I developed a psychological trauma because of Ethan. Feeling disgusted even when looking at my own face, let alone dating anyone. How could anyone possibly like me? Chloe took advantage of my sensitivity and insecurity at the time, encouraging me not to give up on love, saying that not everyone was like Ethan. She offered to introduce me to a boyfriend who wouldn't care about appearances and was a really nice person. Whether I liked him or not wasn't important, what mattered was making a friend. Having not been out for a long time, I foolishly agreed to go, persuaded by her coaxing and after a makeover. Dressed in a white dress, with my long hair covering the left side of my face, I looked beautiful if you ignored the scars. While we were waiting for Liam Simpson to arrive, Chloe pretended to go by water. And I was harassed by two suddenly appearing thugs with bleached hair. Just as I was about to cry in fear, a tall, handsome man appeared out of nowhere like a hero, chasing away the thugs. As if by coincidence, this man turned out to be the boyfriend Chloe wanted to introduce me to. What a cliché and well-designed plot. After being saved, the rescuer becomes the blind date. Sensitive and insecure, I foolishly fell in love with this man who helped me. And didn't show a hint of disgust upon seeing the scars on my face, all under the orchestration of my best friend. In this life, it seemed the two bodyguards by my side had a deterrent effect. The troublemakers didn't show up, and Liam Simpson approached with a smile on his face. He was sunny, handsome, and polite. It would be hard for any ordinary girl not to like him. Only I knew that this guy was a devil. Memories of all the mistreatment from my past life flooded back. I forcefully suppressed the hatred in my heart and greeted him with a smile. Unlike in my past life, Liam wasn't attracted to me. Instead, he paused when he saw the heavily wrapped Chloe and the gauze on her face, asking with concern. Chloe, what happened to your face? At the mention of her face, Chloe's expression stiffened. She glanced at me, a flash of hatred in her eyes, before smiling and saying, It's nothing, just some small injuries. Liam stared at Chloe for a moment before his gaze finally turned to me with a smile. Watching their interaction, I fell into deep contemplation. Chloe was acting like a matchmaker, constantly praising Liam's virtues, extolling his kindness, enthusiasm, and ambition. What she didn't mention was that she and Liam had met while working at a restaurant. Liam was a gambler from a remote rural area who had only completed secondary school. He used his somewhat handsome face to deceive people everywhere, especially naive and kind-hearted girls with decent circumstances. But this didn't stop her from introducing Liam to me, her supposed best friend. The most important thing I noticed was that he seemed to fancy Chloe. We chatted for a while. Liam Simpson was quite the smooth talker, seemingly well-versed in understanding women. If I were still my former self, scarred and insecure, I might have been charmed and fallen for him. But now, it was Chloe Ainsworth who bore the scars. Suddenly, an idea formed in my mind, and I began to scheme. Our conversation came to an end. Liam and I exchanged contact information before he left. Chloe began to pour out her sorrows to me. saying she had just been discharged from the hospital and now had nowhere to go. Because of her facial injuries, she couldn't find work anywhere and was living in a hotel, using her compensation money, but this wasn't a sustainable solution. She then asked about my brother. Every time she mentioned him, I felt like tearing her apart. I stood up and said coldly, "My brother is getting married. It's not convenient to have outsiders staying at home. And besides, you might frighten my future sister-in-law looking like that." With those words, I walked away. Chloe stood there, looking embarrassed, unable to react for a long time. If Ethan was a lecherous, hot-tempered devil, then Liam was a gambler drowning in debt. If he found out that Chloe fancied him and there was a compensation payment involved, what would he do? He'd probably find a way to latch on to Chloe. After all, a fragile girl with no one to love her, a ruined face, and nowhere to go would be an easy target. In my previous life, after I got together with Liam, he quickly swindled me out of years' worth of birthday money and pocket money. My family was well off, and my parents and brother never skimped on me. So it was quite a substantial sum. Then Liam, under the pretext of starting a business to give me a better life, took the money to gamble, ultimately losing everything. I hadn't even reached home when Liam's text came through. After some thought, I decided to text him directly. I told him I couldn't be with him because Chloe had confided in me that she liked him. But due to her disfigurement from an acid attack, she felt too insecure to confess her feelings, and that's why she introduced him to me instead. I also mentioned the compensation Chloe received for her disfigurement, and how she now had nowhere to go, all alone in the world, unloved by her parents. Surprisingly, Liam seemed unaware of Chloe's situation. Yet Chloe appeared to know him well, otherwise she wouldn't have introduced me to him. When he learned about my circumstances, it seemed he thought a sensitive, wounded girl like me would be easy to deceive and get something from, so he agreed. In plain terms, these two were birds of a feather, each with their own agenda. After learning this, Liam kept texting me. "Is what you're saying true? Did Chloe really say that? And did Chloe really receive compensation after her disfigurement?" I replied, "That's right, and it wasn't a small amount either." After that, Liam Simpson never contacted me again. I could guess that he was probably trying to date Chloe, because I saw Chloe showing off a designer handbag on social media. Thinking back to my previous life, I understood what was happening. In my past life, Liam had taken money from me to gamble, and his luck suddenly exploded, winning quite a bit. Then he told me it was profits from his company. He even bought me a handbag, and I was excited at the time, thinking Chloe hadn't lied to me and that Liam was a good man with ambition and diligence. But lies can't hold up for long, and in a gambler's world, there's never a last time. Liam soon lost all the money he had won, and by this time, I had also fallen out with my family because of him. Unable to get more money from me, Liam was chased by gambling debts everywhere. In the end, he tricked me into returning to his hometown with him, a poor, remote village, to hide from the debts. Once there, he seemed to become a different person. The once sunny and gentle man disappeared, turning vicious, terrifying, and violent, taking out all his anger on me with beatings. I was completely stunned at the time, unable to believe how he could change so drastically. I regretted it and wanted to leave, but in the end, he caught me and beat me, confiscated my phone, and tied me up in the room so I couldn't escape. It was only then that I realized I had been deceived by Chloe Ainsworth. The devil finds work for idle hands, and I have no idea how Liam managed to con Chloe into giving him compensation money for gambling. But when I think about how Chloe knew Ethan was a terrifying man with a volatile temper, yet still confessed her feelings to him because his family was wealthy, I think I understand. Chloe only cares about money, not people. As long as Liam has money, she's naturally willing to be with him. Thinking about how I was schemed against to such an extent in my past life, by someone so incredibly stupid, I find it laughable. It turns out I was the most foolish one of all. However, Chloe's efforts will be in vain, as Liam will soon lose everything, down to his last penny. By then, these two will be locked in a toxic relationship, and Chloe will slowly start down the same path I once walked. As I expected, on the day I was accompanying my sister-in-law to try on wedding dresses, I received a phone call from Chloe, who immediately asked to borrow money from me. I asked her what she needed the money for, but she didn't say, only that she had a use for it. I refused her request. It seemed that due to recent events, her disfigurement and being scammed by Liam, Chloe had been hit too hard and finally lost her composure with me. Daisy, how can you be so heartless? I was so good to you back then. I even got disfigured because of you. How can you treat me like this? Have you no conscience? While holding the phone, I watched my sister-in-law try on wedding dresses with a beaming smile and calmly replied, "Don't say that. This is all what you deserve, Chloe. Evil deeds will be punished, you'd better take care of yourself." I hung up the phone. I didn't need to imagine what would happen next. Having been involved with that psychopath Liam, Chloe's days were certainly not going to be easy. My brother and sister-in-law got married smoothly. At the wedding ceremony, I watched the two of them with an indescribable guilt in my heart. But it's all in the past now. 6 months later, my sister-in-law became pregnant. I was even more excited than my brother when I heard the news. After work, I rushed home to celebrate with them. Then I took photos and posted them on social media. Jasmine was the quickest to like the post. We chatted, and she said she'd come visit me in a while. Of course I welcomed her. Just then, my phone suddenly popped up with a message from an unknown number. "Daisy, help me. Call the police. Liam has imprisoned me." I was stunned for a moment when I saw this text, then deleted it with a smile on my face. Time flew by, and my nephew was already 1 year old. The whole family gathered at the villa to celebrate his first birthday. My nephew was chubby, fair-skinned, and adorable, making me dote on him endlessly. Ever since my rebirth, I've cherished every day spent with my family. I'm afraid it might all be a dream and that I'll wake up chained in that tiny room, tormented by Liam again. My brother framed and imprisoned, my sister-in-law miscarrying, my parents dying from strokes, none of that happened. Knowing that it's Chloe who's chained up and suffering somewhere instead of me brings me an indescribable sense of satisfaction. A year later, I saw on the news that the police had arrested a drug trafficking gang. Among them was Liam. The police found drugs in his house, along with a naked woman chained to a bed, her body covered in burn scars. The woman had gone mad and lost the ability to speak. She behaved like a dog, trying to bite anyone who came near her.